Hi, everybody. It's Ilene Greene from MarketShare Communications, and I am so happy today to be back to doing our Meet the Expert series. And I'm thrilled to be interviewing today Steve Ewing, who is hi, Steve, who is a really fantastic videographer and podcaster. And we're going to talk today about podcasting. But Steve, I want you to introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to from where you were to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Steve. I am originally from Portland, Oregon, and I started with radio. I wanted to do radio in college. I studied journalism with a TV and radio focus, and I really wanted to do This American Life. In fact, in college, I did a radio show called This Duck's Life, because that was our mascot, the Ducks. And it was kind of a ripoff of This American Life, but I said, this is pretty fun. But of course, in school, I also learned the video side of things, and I got into documentary video. And right out of college, I got hired by a company called Lindblad Expeditions. And they have expedition cruise ships in remote places. And on each of the ships, they have a videographer. So what I've been doing basically since college is shooting video on board these ships and making mini documentaries for the guests on board. At the end of the trip, they walk away with, well, originally it was a VHS, but then it became a DVD, and that now it's a thumb drive of their trip. And what it really does is drives word of mouth. They go home, their friends say, how was your trip? How was your trip? And they can just say, I'll show you. And they pop that in. And it's a representative documentary of what it was all about. And throughout all of that has been podcasting, because I'm always listening to it while I'm editing, while I'm walking around, while I'm doing chores. And it's been a constant companion. I'm sure I've listened to 10,000 hours of podcasts, and I've probably done 10,000 hours of video and audio editing. So I've been steeped in it for sure.
So let's talk about, I think one of the questions a lot of people we work with have, and it's come up a lot more lately because podcasting is really, really popular now. What exactly is a podcast, and why do people do them? And, including MarketShare, because I think we should start doing them as well. So, fill us in on that a little bit.
Yeah, at its very simplest definition, it's just an audio file on the internet that people can listen to. Another way to say it is it's a radio show that anybody can make from their homes and make available to anyone on the internet for free. So basically what you're doing is using your home recording equipment to do any kind of show you want. You can do an interview show over Zoom, take the audio from that, maybe do a little editing and put it up on the internet. Or you can do a solo show where it's just you philosophizing about whatever you're passionate about, or you can do a panel show. Really any kind of show that you've heard on the radio, you can now do yourself. The barrier of entry on all of this stuff, technology-wise, is so much lower than it ever has been. I mean, that's true for video, and that's true for blogging. It's all, everybody now is a creator, and really to drive your business, you have to be a creator. You have to have that kind of presence and that network of you out there talking about what you're passionate about. And it all sort of feeds each other.
So I think also people have said to me, well, I don't know what to do with it after I record it. So what do people do? I guess they can put it on their website if they have a website.
Right.
And you share it in social media. I know there are special podcasting channels, I guess, that people listen to these on.
Yeah.
Go about uploading a podcast. What would you do?
Yeah. I mean, there's a bit of a misconception about once people have finished their podcast, how do I get it on Apple Podcasts, or how do I get it on Spotify? And the misconception comes from the fact that your file actually doesn't live on Apple's servers. It's not part of iTunes. It's not part of Spotify. What they're doing is looking at your RSS feed, and your RSS feed is just like a URL for a website. And it's a street address, essentially, a street address for where your podcast lives. Apple takes that RSS feed and it says, okay, when someone wants to listen to the Steve Ewing Morning Show podcast, go to this server and look for this file, and it'll play there. So it really lives on a separate server, and it doesn't live on your own computer. It lives on the server, and Apple just points to it.
So
Does that answer the question? I don't think I got it all.
No, I think it does, but I think I'm going to still ask you because I think people say, well, how do I get this street address that you're talking about?
Right. There are a lot of different companies that will do it. One big one is called Libsyn. Another one is Blueberry, missing some vowels because it's a San Francisco company. I guess you have to leave vowels off. One I like is called Fireside.fm. And these companies specialize in hosting podcast files. And again, we're talking about mostly audio. There are video podcasts, but just to keep it simple, we'll talk about audio. So it lives on their servers, and they help you generate all the metadata behind it. And when I say metadata, I mean the date that it was put up there, the title, the description, maybe the what different parts of the episode are all about. People can actually jump to a certain time code in your show notes and get to a certain subject. And so all of that is generated by these servers, these audio servers.
And this is all free to the public?
It's not exactly free because you're taking up a little bit of space on their servers. So most of them, it's about $20 a month. They probably give you a 30-day trial run for a lot of them. I would avoid free ones, actually. That's a good tip. There's a company called Anchor.fm, which is kind of, I don't want to say hated, but it's sort of avoided by serious podcasters because there's an agreement you have to make with them that you don't actually own the files anymore, and they attach advertisements to it that maybe you're not a fan of. So with Anchor, you give up a lot of your autonomy with them. So
at the beginning, you were saying something about it's easy enough to do it at home. Most people are doing their podcasts from their home, I would imagine, or their office if that, when they're getting back to an office. So what exactly would somebody need to do a podcast?
Well, I actually recently met somebody that was just doing it into their phone. They were using a company called Podbean, and I'm not necessarily recommending them or not, but he was just recording them into an app called Podbean, and it made a podcast just by him recording audio files. So it really can be that simple. I'd recommend going a step further and buying some simple equipment. Startup costs for equipment is around $200. You want to get a nice mic that has USB and XLR inputs. So USB obviously would go right into your computer. XLR is a little bit more of a professional input, but it provides a certain better quality and it allows you to be more portable. So there are mics I recommend that have both of those inputs. And you want to have a mic stand of some kind. You generally don't want to be holding the mic, so you can get a stand for $20 or $30. And headphones. You do have to have good closed ear headphones, especially if you are talking to other people. You have guests or you have a panel. Why is that? Because if you're on Zoom and they're talking, you don't want the sound of their voice to pick up on your mic. You want to keep all the other voices in your headphones and not bleeding into the mic that you're talking into. You also want to have the chance to monitor yourself. You want to be able to hear that your audio is good and you're not popping your P's, which is a common problem for newbie. The breath from your voice can cause problems on those P's and those B's. So really, that's all you need. Headphones, microphone stand. You can record right into your computer, like I said. It's a little bit hard to record more than one person into one computer. So if you're recording with more than one person in the room, you probably want to get one of these external recorders from a company that almost everyone recommends. And I also own their recorder, and it's unfortunately called Zoom. They were around before Zoom video conferencing got popular, but it's a company called Zoom. They make one called the H6, which is what a lot of people have. And I'll put it up on the screen here. And it allows you to go to a conference, for example, and interview people at the conference because you've got this handheld recorder. And it really creates good quality files at your home as well. And one more advantage of having an external recorder, you can listen to yourself without any latency. Latency is echo, right? So if you're recording into your computer and listening from your computer, it takes a little while for that data to go through the processor of the computer and get back to your ears. and that creates a little bit of an echo, and it's really annoying to be talking and then hearing yourself. I mean, if you've ever made an international call over satellite, you know how annoying that is. So you can monitor yourself without that delay if you have the external recorder, and that costs just over $300. You've got to have a memory card that you put in there, and that's, I don't know, probably less than $20 or $30. So just to recap it, $200 minimum for the basic equipment. If you want to add on that external recorder, about $600, and then $20 for internet file hosting. That's pretty much everything you need. And all of that cost is upfront. After that, your files are going to live in podcast world for people to listen to forever.
And that's great. And I guess they're searchable. I mean, you would be able to caption them or tag them, I guess, like we do all of our social media, and make them searchable.
Yeah, that's right. You did ask about social media earlier, and I think I neglected to answer that. But you can actually take clips from your podcast and share them on social media, on Facebook and LinkedIn. There's a program I think called headliner.com, which allows you to pull clips from it. And I believe the one I use, Overcast, that's an app on your phone for listening to podcasts. And unfortunately, that one's Mac only, but there are Android options. You can pull clips from that and share.
Super. So, and now for people that are doing some Zoom calls, that might be interesting because they are interviewing, a client, or they're doing something of interest to their clients. Could a Zoom be made into a podcast, or would we have to do something ahead of time to make it so?
No, it can. The Zoom call can be made into a podcast. You would just record everybody's audio separately. Then you'd have to pull it into an audio editor, put everybody on a different track, and then cut out the silences and the different parts that you don't need, export it into an MP3 file, and upload it. So yeah, you could absolutely turn a Zoom call into a podcast.
And that would be something that's already been recorded. So we could go back afterwards and say, hey, I wish I had made this into a podcast. You can actually do that.
Sure. Or just take clips from it.
Yeah. So which brings me to how you help people, because I'm listening to all of this as we're talking, and I'm thinking in my head, there's no way I'd be able to do this by myself. I mean, maybe with some instruction I would. So tell us how you work with clients and what you do for them, and how they come to how we can get in touch with you, and what you can do for somebody to help them with a podcast, or at least get started.
Yeah. I really want to take people from their idea to the final product, 2-3 episodes of a podcast, so they can get a sense of what it's like, see if they like it, see if they're into it, and if they feel like it will help them. The first thing I recommend to people is pick a topic that you're passionate about. And if you can, keep it specific. The internet loves specific because, the rise of nerd culture is all about this particular elf in Lord of the Rings, or this particular Wookiee in Star Wars. And the internet is the perfect place for that. And you can translate that to your topic, your podcast. So let's say you're doing one about running. Okay. Focus on a particular aspect of running that fascinates you, that if you were at a party, a person wouldn't be able to get you to stop talking about. All right. So you're going to start with a rabid base of fans who feel like you're talking directly to them. And that's one big advantage, by the way, of audio, is people feel like you're talking to them, and they make that connection with you. And that's part of building your brand and building that connection with your clients. So first, to pick the topic and pick the format. Okay. So format, a lot of people want to do just a solo of them talking. Oh, I'm a small business person. I'm a sole prop. I want to just do a solo. It's actually harder to do a solo podcast because you don't have anyone to bounce anything off of. And one thing that people don't think about also is talking to somebody else gives you the time to think about what you're going to say next. Okay, there's actually less editing that is involved when you're talking to somebody else because you've got that time to think. So I would think about heroes of yours, peers, or maybe people that you might see above you in prestige that you would like to talk about, that you would like to talk to on your podcast, and reach out to them. Maybe they'll say no. I mean, that's really the worst they can say is no. But as you build more people, as you build more listeners, you can get more and more prestige, so to speak, and maybe you get to talk to your heroes. And then that raises you up as well. And so that's the next step, is to pick your format.
And I'm going to jump in here for a second and say that if you do interview people, the tendency, and we have found this, to be true throughout the marketing we do, is if you have someone else attached to you, that's listening to you or following you, their viewers or their people that they're connected to will also have the opportunity to be connected to you, because one person sharing it is one thing, but when you have 2 or 3 people sharing it, your audience grows by that many more people.
So once you figure out your format, you can really jump in and just start recording. You've got that basic equipment, and you've got Zoom or some other service to connect you with your guests, and you can start to record. A lot of people ask me, how long should it be? And the answer is really any length, but the ideal is around half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. It used to be the wisdom that the length of a car ride to work is the ideal amount, or the length of a subway ride into the city. But currently, we're not doing that. I'm sure some of that will come back. But it should be just short of how long it needs to be, right? You want them to leave wanting more. There are a lot of podcasts that sort of degrade into minutia, and we don't want to go there. We want to make it tight, packed full of information, and just as long as it needs to be. So then that would be my next step, is to help people edit what they've recorded for content to make sense and be interesting. Add a little bit of music here and there, maybe a few bumpers, just to break it up. Just like radio, every 20 minutes, wait, don't tell me has a little break. And that gives your mind a little, okay, reset. Okay, what are we talking about? So edit it, master it. There's some stuff that happens behind the scenes with compression stuff. I won't get into that. And then you can just put it up and tell Apple Podcasts, tell Spotify where it is, and you'd be surprised how fast it gets up there. With Apple, they actually have a human that reviews it to make sure it's not something offensive or inappropriate. And then within 24, 48 hours, a lot of times, you can have your podcast up on the web. Very
cool.
And you can also embed it on your website as well. You mentioned having it on your website. Right. You can, once it's up there, you can take a piece of code, and that's provided by your audio file server. You take that piece of code, you embed it in your website, and you can also have it on your website.
Very cool. And I know there's probably, I can't even imagine how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or more podcasts. And I know people have said to us, I don't know if it pays to get started. What is it going to do for me? We always go back to building the brand. It's another way for people to get to know you. It's searchable, all these things. But are there any statistics out there about how this works? And, just if you know any of that, that would be interesting, I think.
What I like to tell people is, if you're looking to make money directly from your podcast, you probably won't, unless you're very, very lucky. Podcasts make money from merchandising. They make money from advertising. But it's probably not going to be much. There are companies that are known for advertising on podcasts, companies like Casper and stuff. But you've got to have a whole lot of downloads, 100,000, 200,000 or more per week for them to even talk to you. But you can find sponsors that are very specific for your topic. So again, talking about a running podcast, for example, there are all kinds of accessories for shoes. There are all kinds of local shoe stores in your area. You might be able to get them to sponsor your podcast because you've developed it for a very rabid fan base about this specific thing that you are passionate about. So there's that option. But as a larger sense, it's more about building yourself as, you're building your expertise, building your name in the space. And, people maybe listen to your episode every week or every 2 weeks. And then when they need your services, you're top of mind. So if you get one client, depending on what you do, maybe you're a lawyer or maybe you're a massage therapist or something, it only takes a few clients that were brought in by your podcast to cover that equipment cost that you had right off the bat. And then you're in the black. So
that's great. So I think for most business people, I'm thinking in terms of business, as well as people, like you said, who have hobbies or passionate interests. But certainly for a business person, the upfront costs are, fairly minimum, even for a solopreneur. So I don't think that would deter anybody. I think it's more about, the time that goes into it and thinking about and preparing the topics, trying to get people that you might be able to interview. So there, it's like anything you do in business. It takes time to put it all together and then make something of it. So, I think that's people's concerns. Like, well, if I do all of this and then, how will I know if anyone's listening and why would anyone listen? So, that's what I wonder if there are any statistics or any information out there that says, people who do podcasts are, more likely to have a following or get business or whatever, that sort of thing. Steve, so talk to us a little bit about some of the other intangibles that come about when someone does a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of them, actually. I was just talking to a successful podcaster yesterday, and she was talking about how the research she does for the podcast has helped her in her normal practice. You can also find that people will ask you to be a speaker at conferences and different things. She was recently the keynote speaker, and that had never happened before her podcast. She has written a book, and her sales are being driven by the podcast among her other social media outlets. So and it can just be a lot of fun as well. You get to meet other people in your world, and you learn a lot from them, talking to them about that thing you're passionate about.
How often would you recommend somebody doing a podcast?
Generally, they're every week, but every 2 weeks is also pretty standard. I wouldn't go any longer in interval than that, because one cardinal rule actually with making a podcast is you should deliver them on a predictable schedule, especially once you've created that rabid fan base. A lot of them are going to be looking for it to come out every Tuesday at 9 a.m., whatever you set up as your schedule. So you've got to do it consistently for a long period of time to build that reliability. And
do you recommend people prep ahead of time in that they have some sort of, if not a formal script, some key points about what they're going to speak about? Or do you just recommend that they do it sort of off the top of their head? What do you find works best?
A mixture of the two. For me personally, one thing I love about podcasts is that they do feel off the cuff. They are a little bit loosey-goosey, and it's not as structured as something you might see on CNN or a TV show. Because, again, people want to feel like they're hearing from a real person. Make yourself vulnerable, make mistakes, and it's okay if it's a little bit looser than something you might hear on NPR. And I think that really, it endears you to people and gets them to trust you more if you're speaking from the heart and just off the cuff. So, but obviously you don't want it to meander. I mean, that is a problem that does happen in podcasts. So having some kind of outline is definitely a good idea.
Great. So this was super fascinating for me because I've been kicking around in my head that we probably should do it for MarketShare. So I think we have to talk to you about that at some point. But for people that have listened to us today or watched us, how do they get in touch with you?
They should go to my website, which is standinsidemedia.com. And there you can fill out a contact form, maybe give me a little bit idea what you do, what your podcast is going to be about, what your idea is, and we can work together on that. And you can see some of my video clips. I also do video. Like I said, I've traveled the world making video on board ships. So you can see some fun videos of pumas and Galapagos animals and penguins and everything. So go to standinsidemedia.com. And I'll also just end with this. Podcasting is getting bigger. Amazon, Spotify, Apple have all invested a lot of money recently because it's just getting that much more popular. And some of them are producing exclusive podcasts just for their platform. So now is really the time to get in. You don't want to get in at the peak. You want to sort of get in before the peak. And I think we're getting to the point where podcasting will really break out into the larger public consciousness. And what I'll do is I'll put up a link here in the video and maybe in the comments of this video where people can go to a nice Forbes article that lays all of that out and a couple of other articles. So you can see for yourself really how big it's getting right now. And I encourage everybody to reach out to me, and it can be a lot of fun.
That's really great. Thank you so much. This was super today. I'm so happy we got to talk. Like I said, I hope some people that watch this will get, some information and interest from it, touch base with you, and also for myself, because I've been kicking it around and just, I've been afraid to get into it, but now I'm excited to get started. So thank you so much. It was great speaking with you. To everybody else, we're back on track with Meet the Experts, and we'll see you again soon. Ilene Greene from MarketShare Communications. Have a great week.
Thanks, Ilene. Bye.
Bye.